How's everyone doing tonight? This is another edition of Catfish on Ice. Welcome in, everyone. This is your host, Chad Minton, with co-host Rich Howe, and we've got Kyle Perkins back tonight. Super stoked about that. How the hell are you doing, Kyle? We're happy to have you back, man.
I'm doing pretty good. Enjoying this nice winter weather we're having this spring.
Right.
Yeah.
Just glad to be back. It's been a rough little go since the Stadium Series, but hopefully we can start getting back to more normal goings for a little bit.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
love having you back, man, and we're bringing you back at just the perfect time because we get to talk about that debacle, that complete train wreck of a game against the St. Louis Blues. We can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. This is episode 122 of Catfish on Ice, presented by DraftKings and part of the Hockey Podcast Network. We've got our good friend Lindsay in the chat. Hello, boys. Kyle's back. Thank you for being part of the chat tonight, Lindsay.
Yep,
She's watching along on our YouTube channel right now. We appreciate her. Again, we've got some stuff to get into. We are going to talk about that mess that happened on Sunday against the St. Louis Blues. We're going to try to make sense of it. We're going to air our grievances. We want you to air your grievances as well if you're watching live right now on Twitter at Catfish Ice, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel. We welcome it in. We will talk about it. We're going to look ahead a little bit. We're going to talk about we're playing the Flames tomorrow night. It really is a must-win type of situation, if you ask me, because if the Preds keep going down this path, they're going to find themselves out of the playoffs.
For sure.
We are joining the Barn Burner podcast later this episode. It will be on the audio version. You got to download the podcast the next day. We joined the Barn Burner podcast, who covers the Calgary Flames, and we had a really awesome it was like an hour-long discussion we had with them, talking about the Flames and the Predators, all the hot topics happening with both teams. It was a lot of fun. We're going to cover some teams in the playoff field right now who we feel like have the most to prove this season in the NHL playoffs, because playoff time is upon us. So let's get into it. Again, we are brought to you by DraftKings. Our promo code you can use right now is THPN. All right, let's just go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off and talk about this loss to the Blues. The Preds lose 8-3. They get steamrolled for the third time in the last month in a really embarrassing way. And it's just, I went back and looked at it.
Yeah,
I counted around 20 some odd games in the Preds' entire franchise history where they've lost by 5+ goals and gotten completely destroyed. It does not happen very often, and it's happened 3 times in the last month to this team. Kyle, let's give the floor to you since you're back. We really want to hear your thoughts on it first. You get this ball rolling. What the hell happened against the Blues on Sunday, Kyle?
Well, while this game was going on, I was at Easter dinner, and I kept getting the question of, why do you keep looking angrily at your phone? Because it felt like every 3 seconds, ding, St. Louis goal, ding, St. Louis goal. Oh, no. Do I even want to watch this? Do I even want to try to catch up on this? Even though I did have Tarasenko and Kyrou in fantasy, and it was the most painful hocky fantasy
shameless
win
plug
ever.
Shameless plug by Kyle that he's in the finals.
Yeah,
where I'm going to get destroyed because Matt is a 200+ point favorite at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not.
Can I bet on you in DraftKings? Are you available on the DraftKings Sportsbook app to bet on, Kyle?
Probably.
I don't know. I haven't signed the NIL yet, so
okay, fair enough.
But it's just they looked flat. Everything this team has been built on to be successful, they didn't do.
Yep.
There was no spunk, there was no fire to them. They didn't have heart. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but this team is kind of built on that. We're going to outwill you to this victory, and they didn't have that, and it showed really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I totally agree with that, Kyle. Here's what I saw from it. I saw, unfortunately, and this is really as basic as I can make it sound, but it's just true to me. I think the Preds got completely exposed against a much better team, a better constructed team when it comes to really, like, they were putting on a passing clinic on the Preds defense in this game. The Blues were tic-tac-toe carving up the Preds defense. They were chasing the puck. They were getting stunned, like they didn't know where the puck was going to be. And yes, Saros let some goals by that maybe he should have made. I'm not saying that he is not to blame here. I think every player on that team shares the blame, including the coaching staff, including the front office, including the equipment manager. Okay, not the equipment manager. They're all amazing.
Hot dog vendor.
But yeah, it's even the Zamboni driver shares some blame in this. No, okay.
Their skates were dull.
I'll leave it. I'll leave it at the coaching staff and the front office. They all share the blame in this. This was just you got exposed here. The Blues, there's no other nice way to put it. They put on a clinic on this Preds team. They exposed this Preds team. It was just ugly. The Blues called off the dogs in that third period. They could have put a 10 spot on this team.
Oh, easy.
I truly believe that. And they probably let their foot off the gas a little bit. Maybe they didn't, but I think that they could have scored 10 goals in this game the way they were carving up this. It's not like they were scoring goals and the Preds were like putting up an effort to stop these goals from being scored. It was just a matter of just pass here, pass there, pass there, pass there, goal. It was like I've never seen a Preds defense get carved up like that in a long time. It was really, truly hard to watch. I got nightmares from that loss to the Colorado Avalanche. That's the most recent game I can think of where it just snapped and changed on you so quick. And I went back and looked all the way back to the expansion season on some of the worst losses this team's ever faced. You've got plenty of games where they've lost 5-1. They've lost 6-2. But a 5+ goal differential just doesn't happen. I counted around 20 instances, give or take a couple, but around 20 in their entire history when it comes to losing by 5+ goals. But that 9-4 loss in November 2019, where the Colorado Avalanche scored 6 goals in the second period. I remember it like it was yesterday. Matt Duchene scored to put the team up 3-2. And then the Colorado Avalanche proceeded to score 5 goals in 5 minutes of game time. Yep. That's what it felt like yesterday. The Blues were just toying with them. They just doing whatever they wanted to do, and it was really hard to watch. Rich, did you kind of see the same thing? What do you have to say about it, man?
So I liked what they did in the first period. They looked good. They got the first goal. I think I even tweeted out, I was like, when the Predators get the first goal, good things happen. But man, after that, dude, the wheels just fell off. And I know everybody is upset because he started Saros, and I get it. They probably they worked Saros too hard. He needed a break. But I'm sorry, but I think even if they would have started Riddick, it would have been the same result. It would have been Riddick going out, Saros coming in for him, and they would have just continued. They were just on. And Mike Twitter actually brought up a good point. Hot team, rolling, coming off an impressive comeback win after blowing a lead against the Wild. The Blues are the real deal, man. I mean, those guys made the Predators look silly. And I think Adam Vingan put a tweet out and said 7 goals in one period is a franchise record for the Predators.
That is true.
That's just
the most I saw out of all those losses I saw that I tallied up. The worst period I saw was, I think there was an instance where they gave up 6 in one period. And
Yeah.
that was that game against the Colorado Avalanche in 2019. They gave up 6 goals in the second period.
Yep.
In that game I was just referencing to. Other than that, every other time that they've given up 7 or 8 goals in a game or whatever, it's been spread out over 3 periods. So they might give up 3 goals this period, 3 goals the next period. But to give up 7 goals in one period, I mean, and I do think you're right, Rich. The same result probably would have happened with Riddick, but that's why he's a backup goaltender. And I'm still, you're not going to convince me that it would not have been a better idea to start Riddick. Maybe he does give up 8 goals.
I agree.
Okay. Maybe he does. Maybe he's more fresh when he comes in. And maybe he only gives up 6 goals. I don't know. We'll never know the exact answer. The Preds would have lost that game regardless of who started.
Oh, for sure.
But I think it would have done Saros a lot more of a benefit to give him that rest in that game, which is what made sense because you've already wasted a game. And who knows what his psyche's at right now? He's human.
Yeah.
And now you just you really did throw him. So now he's going to be thinking about that in his next start. You better hope that he has a short memory and he can channel it in and not overthink it in his next start. But he is human. Yeah. And I can only speak personally if I was in his position and I just came off that brutal start and I'm overworked. I'm second in the league in starts for the season in the whole league, and you just threw me out there on a back-to-back against the second-ranked power play in the league, playing for a team that commits the most penalties. You threw me in that situation. You set me up in that situation. I'm sorry. It would have been better to put Riddick in there, and if he gives up 8 goals, whatever. You deal with the consequences. Yeah. And you don't bring Saros in. You don't bring Saros in. No matter how bad it gets, you don't bring Saros in. Yeah. You give him that rest. That's where I'm at on it.
For sure. And you talk about Saros' psyche. Predators are not playing well. I don't know if y'all have heard or not. He's given up. He's given up, some goals. It's got to be wearing on him. It would me, for sure. I'd be a wreck. I know he's a professional or whatnot, but yeah, the Predators, he should have stopped some of those goals, but those guys left them 2 guys, Riddick and Saros.
It was target practice. It was target practice. It was open season. Between
that and one other thing real quick, between that and Philip Forsberg having so many, like 2 or 3 breakaway opportunities and couldn't finish. I think Duchesne had one and couldn't finish. Just those are your dudes. Those are your bread and butter guys that have to score, and they're just Phil Forsberg is hurting right now for sure. Yeah. So
go ahead, Kyle.
How much of a difference did losing Lauzon hurt?
Good point.
Because the boy has came in and played well. I mean, has been a absolutely solid guy, good PK guy. He goes out and all of a sudden they look lost again on defense.
Yep.
And that's concerning.
You make a good point there. I think there is definitely some truth to that.
I know he's a every year 3rd pair defenseman, but I mean the
3rd pairing defensemen are important.
They're all important. It's like it's just a 4th liner. You look at the 4th line in the game, the Blues game, and I will die on this hill. Glass, Tomasino, and Tolvanen was the best line in that game. They might not have scored, but they worked harder than any other line that the Predators had out there. Cody Glass looked like he was trying to win that game all by himself. Him and Phil Tomasino together is going to be terrifying in about 3 years.
I'm right there with you. This Preds team's been trying to solve their 3rd pairing defensive woes since their Stanley Cup. I mean, it's been like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's been just a mess. But then you get a Jeremy Lauzon, who everyone's trolling the Predators at the time for making that addition. But he was playing well. We made a whole segment about it in a previous episode talking about, is Jeremy Lauzon growing on us? And me and Rich both agreed that he is. And he's playing well. He was even getting some shots on goal. that the goaltender just happened to save. But Lazan had a couple really good chances to actually score a goal. He has a decent shot on it. He really does.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's from the point. He has got a cannon. Like the first time he wound up and took that slapper, it was kind of Ryan Ellis-ish. I
Yep.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm not
So
going
I'm
to give
glad
him
you
a
brought that
Weber.
up, Kyle.
It didn't take any convincing for me. I was all in on the dude.
I will give you credit there.
Yeah.
You've been following him for a wee bit because of the Boston thing, but
Right.
he just didn't have anywhere to play on Boston. There was no
He
room
didn't.
for him on that roster.
He for sure didn't, and that's one of the reasons why they put him on the expansion list. And then, like I said before, Seattle. I mean, you can't.
Nobody looks good in Seattle.
Yeah, unfortunately,
nobody.
A lot of good players, just not good. But
except for Marshawn Lynch doing donuts on the Zambo, that was pretty awesome. I love that.
But
and
I do have to agree. I think having Lazan would have maybe stopped the bleeding a little bit, but they just look lost. I mean, that's all you can say. They were so lost.
The passing over the last about 3 games.
Yep.
How many times have you seen a pass either hit the boards or just be passed to nobody in general and the other team just scoops it up?
For sure. Yep.
I also feel like I want to see if you guys agree with me. I also feel like that it's really appeared from the outsider looking in, just watching this team play. Just I can only go off of eye test here. I don't. I mean, I'm sure there's some analytics out there that might be able to support this, but I don't have it in front of me. But it really feels like the Predators are overthinking it a lot, and it kind of goes back to the passing aspect that you bring up, Kyle. I feel like this team's just not getting back to the basics of what was working for them earlier in the season when they were having success, and they're trying to be something they're not. They're trying to be a fancy, highly skilled offensive team, and that's just not them. Do they have some highly offensively skilled players? Of course they do. Roman Josi is a highly offensive skilled player. Forsberg obviously is. Matt Duchene is. But they don't have the vast majority of their team is not built with highly offensively skilled players. They have to score goals the hard way. They got to outwork the other team. They got to play smart. They got to block shots. They got to protect their goaltender. They've got to do all the little things to be a really good hockey team. They're not doing the little things lately. They're trying to be something they're not. They're trying to do all these fancy passes. And I think Forsberg has been pushing a little too hard lately. He's not letting the game come to him. I don't know. That's what I'm seeing, and they've got to snap out of it quick.
I hate to say it too, Matt Duchene, same with him. Seems like he's trying to force it a little bit too much. We've talked about it a lot. The Predators try to match whatever team they're playing. They see, these fast skaters, and that's what they try to do. They want to skate fast. They see these guys with these fancy stretch passes and all these other passes that they're hitting right on the tape, and then that's what they try to do. For some reason, I don't know why they do that. But they always try to match.
You can get away with it when you're playing a team like Chicago. You can get away with it when you're playing a team like Ottawa. You can get away with it when you're playing some of these other teams where they've gotten wins recently. But you're not going to get away with it when you're playing a team like St. Louis. You're not going to get away with it if you sneak into the playoffs and you have to play Calgary. And we're going to talk about it later in this episode when we join the Barn Burner podcast and get their thoughts on their Calgary Flames. But you're not going to get away with it against those teams. And that's kind of what I've been saying for the past couple weeks is, and we even made a whole segment about it, talking about, are we kind of numb to the playoffs this year? Do we feel like making the playoffs is just we're set up for failure anyway? And so really all we're doing is playing to host a couple games on Lower Broadway so we can have a party, which I love that. It's always fun to host playoff games on Lower Broadway, but I mean, I don't know. And when I see a game like Sunday against St. Louis, it kind of reaffirms my disbelief in what this team can do in the playoffs. I don't think they've really changed at all when it comes to having playoff success.
And do you really want to get in the playoffs to play the Avs in the first round and have that happen on a national broadcast?
And get embarrassed?
Yeah, and have people.
I mean, you might as well make it. You came this far. I mean, you might as well make it in at least. But
I'd like to hope that they would put up some kind of fight like they did against Carolina. Everybody counted them out against Carolina, and they took them to 6 games. It could have went either way.
And 4 straight overtime decisions in that game, in that series. 4 straight overtime decisions.
Yeah, Carolina got stunned. Everybody knows it. They went out in the second round. I'd like to hope that they would put up some kind of fight, and they probably will. If they're fortunate enough to get in, they'll put up some kind of fight. But it just seems like it's too overwhelming at this point.
Everybody hit cold at the exact wrong time.
Yes.
I mean, and it's just, it seems like everybody hit cold, and then Saros, the season has caught up with him, and it's just a bad time right now.
Absolutely.
Lindsay. And it's the worst time for it to happen because, I mean, you're facing a really hard part of your schedule too. I mean, the schedule makers, maybe they didn't know so at the time, but they didn't do this Preds team any favors because this remaining schedule is brutal, man. I'm telling you, like, it is just not going. I mean, they're going to have to prove something here. They're going to have to pull off some upsets. They're going to have to hope that the teams they're battling with right now for playoff spots,
for sure,
they got to hope that those teams lose to some non-playoff teams.
Yep. Lindsay
that's
says
kind of where you're at.
Yeah, Lindsay says they're getting way too fancy. They need to get back to their physical game. If they match other teams, they're going to get burned. And then she backs that up with what made this team so successful was that physical game and their heart and soul line and that never quit attitude. Absolutely.
Yep.
That's 100% true. And then Nikki, I was on here. Hello, Nikki. Anything can happen, though, in the playoffs. To be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yep.
That's true.
I love that, Nikki. I love that comment there. Thank you for that comment on our YouTube stream right now. Thank you for that, Nikki. And I want to kind of touch on that. So we always naturally look back at the 2016-17 team that entered the playoffs in very similar fashion. I mean, that team entered the playoffs with no buzz around them, no hope whatsoever. They barely snuck through the back door. They drew the Chicago Blackhawks, who were still riding the end of their dynasty, and they swept that team. So, yes, anything can happen, and we would rather obviously see this Preds team sneak into the playoffs at all costs, even if it's ugly, and see what happens, roll the dice. But we're also trying to be realistic here, and we're trying to look at the probabilities, and our confidence was way higher in this team a few weeks ago when they were playing to their style. When they were playing to their style, because when they play to their style, as Lindsay just commented, when they play to their style, they actually look like a team that could pull off an upset. But they got to get back to their style, and that is, yes, they're going to go to the penalty box sometimes. That just goes hand in hand with the way they play. But they got to start playing smarter. They got to start playing more to the way that they are, which is a hard forecheck. Yep. They're not going to razzle-dazzle you with a lot of offense, but they do have some playmakers that can score in those moments, but they've really got to bring it back to playing a strong defensive game. And what scares me is I'm not so sure that they have the personnel in their defensive pairings to pull that off right now. Just don't know.
So you look at the penalties that Nashville has took throughout the season. You look some of the Boro penalties and stuff, an interference from him, a roughing. There's intent behind those type of penalties. The penalties that they've been getting the last couple of games are lazy hooking penalties, or little piddly things. If you're going to slash somebody, break their stick in half.
Frustration penalties. They're frustrated.
Yeah.
And I think they're committing penalties because of that.
And those aren't the kind of penalties that you're actually gaining anything off of. If you truck somebody, you can take something from that. That accomplished a little something. It's not a good look for you, but it's. I mean, at least you did something. It just wasn't a lazy penalty.
Yeah.
They're
There's also something to be said about this. I'm sorry, but I really see this. The Preds have a target on them. I'm not saying that the referees are completely corrupt and they're doing it on purpose, and that the Preds don't commit a lot of penalties. Rightfully so, they do. But you can't tell me that they don't have a target on their backs when it comes to like a microscope on them whenever a referee crew takes over a Predators game. They know the way the Predators play. They get scouting reports on teams just like other teams do. And
I mean,
they're looking for it. They are looking for it.
agree.
Now, do they swallow the whistle sometimes? Do they let the teams play sometimes? Yeah. But they know that the Predators are a team that plays very aggressive, that does certain things. And I'm sorry, but that's going to keep happening most likely. And there's going to be plenty of calls that are going to be 50-50 borderline where it's going to make us mad. Like, oh, you could have called – that could have been a no call. But I don't know if the Predators are going to get the benefit of the doubt in those types of calls.
I don't think they are.
The fact that
Malkin
stayed in that game with the Penguins game.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, don't even.
I have two really good friends who are Penguins fans, and they're like, yeah, he shouldn't have touched the ice again.
Yeah,
and I'm still mad at the Preds that nobody held him accountable for that.
Yes.
I'm salty as all get out. Somebody should have had to answer the bell for that. A clean hit's a clean hit, a dirty hit's a dirty hit, and you answer the bell for a dirty hit, and somebody from that team should have took it to him.
So let's go around the room here. I don't want this to be an obvious answer. Let's kind of think about this a little bit. But let's go around the room here. What's one thing that realistically can change, whether it's a player, whether it's switching up an adjustment, changing a line? What's one thing the Preds really can do over how many more games are left for the Preds? Let me get the exact number.
Six
games.
6 games left. In these last 6 games, as they have a 4-point lead on the Vegas Golden Knights right now as we speak on a Monday night, each team has 6 games left in the season. Let's not even think about Dallas anymore. Let's just think about Vegas at this point. That's the team we got to beat out, just for the argument's sake. What is one thing? I'll start it off, and then we'll go to Kyle, and then we'll go to Rich. Here's mine. For this team to really shift and flip this over these last 6 games to push into the playoffs, get back to us feeling good about ourselves over these last 6 games, it's going to have to take a really strong effort from the stars that got you here in the first place. And I hate to put it all on them, but that's why you are superstars. That's why Philip Forsberg might earn $10 million a year possibly when he hits the open market. That's why Roman Josi is who he is. And I hate to put it all on those players because they've already had such great seasons. But now is do or die time. Now is crunch time. This is where you earn your money. This is where superstars separate themselves from ordinary players in this league. Forsberg, Josi, Duchesne. I'll even throw Matthias Ekholm in there because he has been a great player in this league for so long. I'm going to throw Mikael Granlund in that category. These players, Ryan Johansson for sure is in that category. These players have to put up or shut up and live up to the talented players that they are. They got to live up to the reputations here over these last 6 games and help carry this team into the playoffs. And then you take it all from there. So that's what I got to see. Because, Rich, you brought it up. Forsberg has hit a little bit of a dry patch here. That can't continue. It can't.
No.
Kyle, give me one from you, man. What do you think? What's something that just has to happen where you're like, okay, this is really what sticks out to me, where it's like this has to change right now? The passing
game. I think that's passing game and getting through the neutral zone. You fix either of those two, and you've done a lot, which one feeds to the other. But they can't get through clean, and it's just
Too many
kills them.
Too many stretch passes too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, to your point, Kyle, it feels like pretty much the basis of their offensive attack right now is hoping and praying they get some pinball style goals. Like, they're not really setting up anything. They're not really doing anything that's sustained pressure, that's putting a lot of pressure on the opposing team. They're not really putting a lot of pressure on the opposing goaltender. Maybe like Bennington. Yeah, he had to make a couple decent hard saves, but they didn't test him really hard. They didn't.
They didn't, and he is beatable too. That's the thing. Like, he is very beatable, and had they played more to their style, they could have definitely beaten him for sure.
Yeah. But to beat most goaltenders in the NHL, to beat most, not all, but to beat most, you got to have some sustained pressure. And it goes back to the passing aspect that Kyle's bringing up. You can't just go, try to push your way into the zone and make all these fancy passes and hope that something happens, because you're starting to face teams, and especially if you do get in the playoffs, you're facing teams that are smart. They've got great defensive players. They've got great structure. They're going to break up those dumb passes. They're going to be in the right position to block shots. They're going to push everything to the outside so that their goaltender can make easy saves. You've got to start having better structure, and maybe that goes down to the coaching. Maybe John Hines' system is starting to get a little bit exposed here as well. Maybe this offensive attack, this system that the Preds have, is just stale and it's been figured out. I don't know.
I think that's a good point. You touched on Forsberg, Granlund, and Duchesne. I 100% agree with that. Those guys have got to kick it into another gear and just prove themselves, because they are.
And that seems kind of unfair to ask that of them, because they've had such great years already.
They have. You're right. You're absolutely right. But they have to. They're not going to make the playoffs if those guys don't step up. The other thing, I got two things actually, is Saros needs to get his confidence back. They're not going to go anywhere if he doesn't get his confidence back. If he doesn't play like he's played, he's going to have to steal games and just be, amazing like he has been all season. The other thing is the secondary scoring. Those guys that's another touchy area. Those guys have got to figure out. I'm looking at Cunnin, I'm looking at Yakov Trenin. Those guys are known to score some big goals in the past. Tolvanen, he got one the other night, but that's it. They've got to figure that out somehow. I don't know what to do. So,
touching on Saros, you said he's got to get his confidence back. He is tied for the league lead in starts by goaltenders with Connor Hellebuck at 64. Yeah. Jacob Markstrom, goaltender for the Calgary Flames, is next up on that list with 60 starts. Then it goes down to 58 starts for Vasilevsky, and Thatcher Demko goes down to 56 starts after that. So, by far, UC Saros has been completely he's just been really pushed heavily upon. I know he's young. I know he wants to play. I'm not saying that he should go up to the coach and say, "Coach, don't start me." No, he should want to play.
Oh, yeah,
he's a competitor.
Absolutely.
But at some point, the coach has to make the right decision to see that you're talking about still a very young goaltender who is the cornerstone of your franchise along with Roman Josi. You've got to manage his starts a little bit better, or you're going to really screw up his confidence and his psyche. I really feel that way. And maybe he will come out on Tuesday night against Calgary and just completely just put on one of those great performances and put up a 40. We know he has it in him. The talent's
Absolutely.
there. We know that. But you can't tell me that he's not wore out right now. And this is the worst time of the season for your starting goaltender to be wore out.
Yep. No, I agree 100%.
It's one thing if you're the – real quick, it's one thing if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning, who they have Andre Vasilevsky. But now they can rest Andre Vasilevsky because they've already got their playoff positioning locked up. But when you're a team like the Predators riding on that playoff bubble, and now you've got a wore-out goaltender who you need, it was poor management. It's poor management.
And to touch on poor management, it's all season. You can look back at this whole season, and I really feel they've mismanaged their goaltenders. You can't bring David Riddick in not playing for a month and a half and then expect him to, he stole some games. Like, he's played really well when he's had to, and then there's been games where he hasn't. But you can't expect someone to come in and perform to the level that they need him to when you don't play for a month and a half.
And then he threw him in the game on Sunday, cold off the bench. What'd you expect to happen? Of course he was going to get carved up just like Saros did. I mean, that's really hard to ask a goaltender cold off the bench to come in and go up against what the Blues were doing to the Preds in that moment. Of course Riddick gave up goals. Of course he did. Almost any goaltender would have given up goals cold off the bench going up against that.
For sure.
So, I mean, I don't know. It would have been the same result either way. But, I think Riddick should have had more starts this year. And then you might have you would have a more fresh Saros at this point, possibly.
Absolutely. Stupid Seals on here. They need to get back to their game. I feel over the last couple of games, they lowered the amount of hits per game. That's true. Get back to the physical game. They'll make mistakes and advance off those mistakes. Yes, they do. They definitely need to get back to play their style of game. That's for sure.
I jokingly said when we were talking to the barn burner guys something about they can't hit the goal if they can't see it. Yeah. If you beat up the other team, they're not going to want to keep trying to do all their fancy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Nashville does not. Nashville has two players, I think, that can legitimately do the fancy stuff, and that's Yossi and Duchesne. I love Philip Forsberg, but he is not a fancy skater. He is not a dipsy-do kind of guy. Glass and Tomasino maybe someday might have that level of skating.
Yeah.
But Duchesne and Forsberg.
Forsberg's more of a power forward. He's going to overpower you. He's going to use his body and his big frame to overpower and work his way in, most likely.
And everybody seems to be on the same page with. I'm a very bookish person, and I was reading a book the other day, and there's a blacksmith in this book, and he said something that made a lot of sense to me. He said, whenever you've got the piece of stock to make a paring knife, no matter how much you want a hammer, you make the paring knife because you need to use what it should be. The Preds are a hammer. They're not a paring knife. They're not this little small instrument to carve nicely. No, they're a blunt object that you're going to beat something with, and they just need to embrace that.
They've gotten away from it. But I think that presents a matchup problem against teams like the Blues who can outskill them and can outskate them. And so that's a potential problem, but
huge problem.
It's one of those things where the Preds are going to have to live with who they are. And one thing that's definitely not going to work, they can't get away from who they are. That's for sure. Yeah. Definitely not this late in the season. This is not the time in the season for you to try to be making massive adjustments to how you play. Like, it's way too late for that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting ready to bring up. What Seal just said. The Wild. Nashville has played the Wild heavy every single game this year. They have absolutely just crushed them. That team has skill running out their ears.
Mm-hmm.
And Nashville's just been able to walk on them pretty much every time they've played this year. Why they don't try to play the same type of game against these other teams, I do not understand. The game plan should almost be identical between a team like the Blues and a team like the Wild.
Yep. I think it's really because they play to the team that they're playing. They try to match
Preds get another chance to do something on Tuesday night against the Calgary Flames. They haven't seen the Flames since way back in early November. So this is going to be the first of 2 matchups in a week against the Flames, a team that's already locked up a playoff spot. We're joining the Barn Burner podcast later in this episode. If you're listening on the audio version, stay tuned for that. You can download the podcast the next day. If you're watching the stream right now, you can hear that full interview with them. We went with about almost an entire hour, a little over an hour, I think, with the Barn Burner podcast, and it was a lot of fun joining those guys, talking about Preds and Flames. All right, before we get to our final segment of Catfish on Ice, episode 122 with Chad Minton, Rich Howe, and Kyle Perkins, your host, let's tell you about DraftKings, our sponsor, our amazing sponsor who has a great deal for all of our amazing hockey fans who follow and listen to our podcast. Hockey fans, feel the action on the ice like never before with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. Right now, new customers can bet just $1 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets. Really, really awesome offer right now for our hockey fans. We love it. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet just $1 on any NHL team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. 21 and up restrictions apply. Please see our show notes for details on responsible gambling practices. And if you need gambling help, you can check that out, that information in our show notes in the episode description. You can easily withdraw your winnings on DraftKings. It's safe, secure, and reliable. And you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. And you can also get in on daily fantasy hockey contests. So please go take advantage of that to all of our listeners. Promo code THPN with DraftKings. All right, let's broaden out the playoff discussion here as we hope the Predators can obviously sneak into the playoffs. But let's leave the Predators out of this for a second. Let's talk about some teams that are in the playoff field that we know for sure who we feel like has the most to prove. Maybe a team that's, I mean, we know they're good, but they really have to show us something in these playoffs. Really interested to see what teams we come up with here, see if we agree on these teams or not. Rich, you want to get us started here? Throw out a team out there that you feel like has a lot to prove to the league.
It's definitely, in my book, the darlings of the NHL, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Those guys can't get out of the first round ever. And I think they've played well this season, and they're really, making a push. And they're
Austin Matthews is doing incredible things for them right now.
Absolutely, for sure. I think it's going to be whoever they play in the first round, they're going to take it to them. I think they've got the most to prove. I think Edmonton's another one because they're notorious for underperforming here recently. So I think both
those teams are peas in a pod as far as having to prove something, in my opinion.
For sure. Yep.
Those
I
are
agree,
two.
100%.
You can't. It's hard to beat those two teams as far as teams to prove. The Eastern Conference is really going to be up for grabs, though. I mean, it's really stacked. I mean, it's very evenly matched. I feel like we're going to see some upsets. We're going to see some higher seeded teams probably get upset. Like you're looking at the wild card teams. You're looking at it, and I mean, you're looking at teams like the Capitals. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Capitals prove some people wrong and pull off an upset. They are currently the second wild card team right now with 94 points. Rich, your Boston Bruins. I mean, come on now. They're a good enough team where they could pull off an upset. They're the other wild card team right now,
which is crazy.
I mean, and then you look at these top 3 teams in each division. It's ridiculous. Like they're all cup caliber teams. They all are.
Every one of them over 100
stacked.
points, except Pittsburgh.
The East is so
all
stacked.
of them. Yeah, all of them have over 100 points, except for Pittsburgh. So, yeah, it's huge.
All right.
They're all of them have already clinched. They're all set. Yep.
Here's my team. And my team is the team that has the most points. Well, no, the second most points in the league right now. And that is the Florida Panthers. I think they have the most to prove right now because they've got to prove to all of us that they're not just some regular season fluke.
Right.
And they're a small market team. If you've seen their home games, they don't get a lot of fans, which is so sad because it's such a talented team.
Yeah,
I mean, oh my gosh, that team is so fun to watch.
Yeah,
full of superstars. But I think they have a lot to prove because I can tell you right now, if they flame out in the first round or even if they lose in the second round, honestly, they're going to be the butt of a lot of jokes.
Yep.
Because people are going to say, oh, the poor little Florida Panthers. Yeah, good job in the regular season. But you can't get it done when it matters. Yeah, you've got, all these great players, Jonathan Huberdeau, who I love to watch play. But it's like, if they lose in the playoffs, especially in the first round, oh my gosh, the trolling is going to be out of control for that poor team if they get knocked out in the first round. So I think they have a lot to prove. I do think Colorado as well is got a lot to prove because they're the favorites. They're kind of the favorites, and there's no excuses to not win it's cup or bust for that team. So obviously they have a lot to prove as well.
For sure.
I'm going to go with Edmonton, and it's a lot of I really hope they lose because sad Connor McDavid makes me happy. I just can't like him. I'm sorry. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we made this comparison. So back in the day, you had Sid and Ovi. A lot of people really like Ovechkin and don't like Sidney.
Yep.
And you go to today, you have McDavid and Matthews. A lot of people kind of are irked by Connor and will end up liking Matthews.
Yep.
So I see the similarities in those two.
But
another team that I really think needs to prove something this year, and that's going to be Carolina. Carolina's first in the Metropolitan. I mean, they've been right there leading the division all year long.
They got
the last couple
news,
of years.
They got bad news.
That's good.
Freddie Anderson.
Did they?
He's hurt. Yeah, he's something happened. He got a lower body injury or something. I don't remember.
Ooh.
I saw it the other day. I don't know what's come of it lately.
Looking at Edmonton's playoff positioning right now, they're holding on to second place in the Pacific. They could still fall into that third place spot, but it looks like they're going to at least be top three in the Pacific, most likely. So their likely first-round opponent's going to be either LA or if somehow Vegas could push past LA. I think in this whole wild card race, it's kind of easy to forget about LA still being in this mix for the wild card. And there is a scenario where Vegas could push into the top three, and then the Preds have to finish ahead of LA. And it's kind of easy to forget that LA is still in this mix as well as far as pushing for a playoff spot. So looking at Edmonton, if they have to face Vegas in the first round, if Vegas gets into third place in the Pacific and they get past LA, I'm sorry, but Vegas is one of those teams that they've underperformed all season, but they're a team that they could get hot at the right time in the playoffs and upset a team like Edmonton. I would not be that surprised by that at all.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think, Kyle?
I mean, Vegas just got Leonard back. So, I mean, they could come back and end up making some noise. Their problem's getting there.
And Mark Stone's back in the lineup too now. Mark Stone's back in the lineup. So
yeah, once they can get there, they're fine. Then they can just activate everybody, and it's Tampa from last year.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Golden Knights
There's
currently
a-
losing to the
there-
New Jersey Devils.
There's a totally
Are they
still
really?
a scenario.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me happy. I
It's
love Robin, but that makes me happy.
1-0, but
There's still a scenario out there where LA could be the odd team out. Like they've been in the top 3 all year. They've had a really fun year. They're kind of one of those teams that has kind of surprised some people a little bit.
Yeah.
But they could also, they're very much in the same boat as the Predators right now in terms of they could just end up coming up just short of making the playoffs, and Vegas could steal that spot from them. So, yeah, I think in the end, though, Edmonton's a really good choice. Toronto's a good choice. Definitely Carolina's a good choice. It's going to be a really good Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's hope the Predators get in on that mix, and let's just see what happens. I think Dallas is they could fall out as well, but they're currently in the first wild card spot with the tiebreaker over the Predators because they've played one less game.
Dallas losing to the Vancouver Canucks right now, 2-1.
Well, that's good. We'll take
but
that.
There's only 4 minutes left in the first period, so
it's
long, a lot of game left.
I don't think scoreboard watching is going to do us any favor at this point, guys. I think that if the Preds aren't going to take care of their own business, then we don't belong in there in the first place.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm at with it.
I agree with that. Big game tomorrow to prove that.
All right, before we get to our session with the Barn Burner podcast, hockey podcast who covers the Calgary Flames as part of the Hockey Podcast Network, what are your guys' first thoughts on the Flames matchup? Let's go to Kyle, then we'll go to Rich, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Nervous. Very, very nervous. They match up extremely well against Nashville. There's a lot of top-end skill on Calgary. There's a lot of grit on Calgary. If Nashville tries to play speed against them, they're going to get boat raced again. And they don't really have an answer for Johnny Gaudreau, that line. If to go speed versus speed, if they play their style of hockey, they can play against them. But if they try to go speed versus speed, it's going to end up ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. They've got to play their game. Saros put what happened out of his head. I mean, it's 6 games left, and they need 7 or 8 points to possibly get in. Tall task, but just got to turn the corner tomorrow. That's for sure.
We have here's it's been a little doom and gloom in this episode 122. So let me end it with a little bit of a positive here. The Preds have shown this season that they can rise up to the occasion and beat some really good teams in big moments.
Yep.
So let's see if they can do that again. I do think they have the locker room and the chemistry to pull it off and to come together tomorrow night or tonight if you're listening on Tuesday. They do have it. I'm not trying to question the heart and fortitude of that locker room. I think that they have all that. What it really comes down to is, do they have the overall raw skill and system in place to hang with these legitimate Stanley Cup teams that they have on this remaining schedule?
Yep.
St. Louis Blues just completely gave us a dose of humble pie, the biggest dose of humble pie. And Calgary has that same skill level to do the same thing to us. If we roll out and do the same thing we did against St. Louis, you're talking about another lopsided, embarrassing loss this team just can't handle right now. They've got to come out with a really smart and strong and disciplined effort. I think they're going to do it. And I'm going to be at the game, so I'm speaking it into existence. I'll be in the building on Tuesday night to watch the Preds and the Flames. And I'm speaking it into existence right now. The Preds are going to play a very, very strong, great game. Does that mean it's going to lead to 2 points? I don't know, because the Flames are a really good team. But
They are
I
very
do
good.
think they're going to play a much better game on Tuesday night, and maybe they can pull it out and get the 2 points they drastically need. All right. This has been a lot of fun. This has been episode 122 with Chad Minton, Rich Howe, and Kyle Perkins, as Kyle Perkins has rejoined the show. We're so happy to have him back.
Yes.
We missed him.
Welcome
It's
back,
been a
sir.
lot of fun talking tonight. Thanks, everybody, for joining us in our YouTube channel live chat. And now you need to stay tuned for our segment with the Barn Burner Hockey Podcast covering the Flames. It was a lot of fun. Download the podcast today. It will be available later tonight. If you're staying up late, you can download it later tonight or check it out tomorrow. That's going to wrap up episode 122. Thanks a lot, everybody. This is Chad Minton and Rich Howe and Kyle Perkins signing off. Have a great night. We will see you later on for the next episode.